Space, the final frontier. Well, okay, not really. All right, take two. Here in the Mitten State, welcome to Code 47, bringing you all things Star Trek, spanning the quadrants, the best thing since the neutral zone.
Hello, my fellow Trekkers. Welcome back to the Code 47 podcast on the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. This is episode 164. I am your humble servant, Trek Lord of West Michigan, Charlie Carden, joined as always by my Trekkin' number one, Mr. Peter Stein. Peter, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Doing all right.
Excellent. Good deal. Well, this is our first episode of the new year, so welcome to 2026. If you happen to be listening when this comes out, if you're listening in the distant future, then we've told you what time it is now. But yeah, we've got a fun show. We are I don't want to say treading water, but in our next episode, we'll get into talking about Star Trek Starfleet Academy, which I've seen because I had a screener. I've seen the first 5 episodes. I got one more to go, but April and I have gotten caught up in Stranger Things fever, so we're rewatching the show right now. But with the one episode left, I've heard the 6th episode is an action masterpiece, and the villain who was in the first part returns. And again, I'm not betraying any details because that's a big no-no, but I'm excited. I'm excited to get Peter's take. We're hoping to get, though I haven't gotten commitments yet, I'm hoping to get some of our regular Trek-related contributors to come back and talk about it with us. But if we don't, it'll be Peter and me. And if you listen to the show, I would imagine you like listening to us because, I started the show. Peter's been on for most of it, and it's our deal. So, so we're looking forward to that. But for this episode, we're continuing to talk about the awesome Center Seat documentary, which I have enjoyed the hell out of. A couple of great episodes to talk about, and a random episode of Deep Space Nine, which I enjoyed very much as well. But so we'll get right into that, and we got a couple of news stories too. But first and foremost, I'll get the housekeeping out of the way, and thank the wonderful people on our Secret Friends Unite Patreon over at patreon.com/Secret Friends Unite. Can't say enough about the perks of joining. All of our shows come out free. For example, we generally drop the show on a Sunday night where the rest of the world gets it on a Monday night. Okay, that's one day. But you know what? If you really enjoy the show, I bet you don't want to wait. But even more exciting is all of the exclusive programs we have. Episodes going back now 3 years of things like the Facts Geek Life, where Peter and I are currently talking about Ron Moore's Battlestar Galactica. We're about to get into the 4th and final season. You don't want to miss it. Especially if you've never seen the show or if you just want to hear us talk about it, you'll enjoy that. Also, there's a great exclusive channel over on our Discord just for our Patreons. Here's what you do. Your first week is free when you pop over there. Your first month is half off, which is a real bargain. And again, you stay on board for as little as $2 a month, which is not a $6 a month. That's not even a trip to Starbucks. And there's tons of entertainment to keep you entertained as you go about your daily and weekly routine. So we would love to have you at least give us a try for 7 days. Patreon.com/Secret Friends Unite. We hope to see you there. All right. We got 2 news stories this week. My goodness, news is happening. Although one is news and one is just kind of a retrospecticus, as I like to say it. But or actually kind of a look forward. I didn't do this is what Star Trek did in 25. I mean, you know what Star Trek did in 25 because you were there. But we are entering the 60th year of the franchise, which won't technically happen until September. But everything is teeing up, starting up with the Rose Parade float, which had George Takei and Rebecca Romaine. And I know one of the actors from the new show, and I'm kind of drawing a blank on who the last person was, Peter.
So it was Kareem DNA, who is from Starfleet Academy, and Tig Notaro.
Yeah, and Tig Notaro. And Tig is in SFA as well, and she's absolutely terrific. So, kicking it off, that happens on January 15th. We are recording on January 4th. I've already kind of talked about that, but I'm excited to hear what Peter has to say about it. It is a different kind of show, but Peter, I will tell you, not in a bad way. I'm very enthused. I'm enjoying it, and I hope other people, feel the same. So I guess we will figure out what else, Peter, as you look at this, what else is happening in 26 that is on your radar that you're kind of excited about?
I think something that I'm excited to hear more about is the development of the new Star Trek film.
Yes, absolutely.
So I want to know more about what we're doing with that. What era is it set in? What aesthetics are we going to get? I mean, I like the world building, so I want to know what we're working with.
Right.
We won't find out the plot until the movie comes out.
Right.
So if I want to get excited about anything, you got to do the world building. So I want to see what are we doing? Are we going return to formula? Are we going Are we going post TNG? Are we doing Lost era?
Mm-hmm.
Please just not a TOS prequel.
Yeah, please. I hear you.
For those.
Yeah, and I go back and forth about it, but you're right. It might be just good enough to put the pin in it. And again, we have a little more information about that.
So I'm excited about that. Yeah. I'm excited about the Voyager video game.
Yeah,
getting finished. I did play the demo. I thought it was fun.
Yeah, cool.
So I'm thinking that's going to be cool, and then hopefully it looks like we're getting the Voyager documentary. Hopefully.
Right, which we absolutely wanted to talk about on this show as we were ending Voyager, because that's what we did when we ended DS9 and we ended The Next Generation. We had a doco to talk about.
Yep.
And so, I was bummed out, and I'm sure others are bummed out. Unfortunately, when that Kickstarter was happening, I was not in a position to support it, which I regret, because if I had, I would have had a chance to see it or learn more information about it, though I didn't live in one of the cities where there was a screening. But our contributor, Ellie Littlechild, who lives in London or the London area, did get to see it and got to tell us how much she enjoyed it. So I look forward to that. Also, the center seat, which we've been talking about, which is from the Nacelle company, Brian Volkweiss, who has been a friend of the show. Looks like they're going to be putting out more episodes about it, which is pretty exciting. Focusing on films. Kelvin Films, unfortunately. TNG Films, which I'm happy to know that much more about. But the Kelvin Films could be excited to a great number of people.
To learn about like the process behind it, because if we get any more, if we get the depth of the absolute insanity that we got to learn about with motion picture, and in this one, Final Frontier, like maybe we'll get to figure out why some of the strange decisions got made, and that would be, I think that would be interesting.
Right, I agree. And the streaming era, which has been, all over the place. There have been shows that Peter and I have enjoyed. There have been shows that we haven't. So I would be in, and there have been, controversial decisions like Star Trek Prodigy appearing and being great and then disappearing. And so and Brian does an absolutely terrific job. So my, my hats off to Brian, and we'll talk more about that later. And then a documentary about the work of Michael Westmore, who brought us all of the absolutely incredible makeup designs from the golden era back in the 90s, the TNG era.
TNG forward.
Yeah, exactly. And then, and then licensing. Licensing is changing. We talked about that in our last episode. There are some smaller licensees that had to pull out, the Hero Within, and we talked about an artist. But, we have the Nacelle people hanging in there.
Fansets is hanging in there. They're actually making a new Monster Maroon Delta. That they
I did see. Yep,
they call the Generations variant, which is a little bit more pointy.
Yeah,
so I'm probably going to be picking. I'm probably picking that one up just a little bit. I might pick that one up because I like the pointier deltas.
And it looked like they even had the scratch on it from when
did they have that too?
It looked that way. I'd probably have to look at the picture again. So, and getting a resolution to this merger mania, Paramount Skydance, which a lot of people are not fond of them as a corporation, is attempting to also acquire Warner Brothers, and a lot of people think it's not going to happen, that Warner Brothers is pushing back. So I'll be glad, and again, this really highlights the fact that it'll be great when it's over. Because
most things are.
I don't enjoy the corporate skullduggery without a doubt. But again, they say talk about, tropes and cliches, expect the unexpected. Yeah, sure. Yeah. I mean, things are going to happen that we don't know about. And that's part of what all the excitement is. But, if I can say anything positive about Skydance, they do seem to be investing, at least with their words, in putting more into Star Trek and talking about, yes, we're finally going to resolve this thing with the film, where a lot of things have floundered for a number of years. So
Skydance has worked on a bunch of things that I think have been pretty solid. So I'm not like too worried about what they're going to do. But I mean, again, we'll see. I don't know.
It's a lot of wait and see. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. So, but another thing that happened, moving on, is that Strange New Worlds has wrapped production on season 5. And again, a lot of people are bemoaning it, and I don't necessarily disagree, that this year in 26, we're supposed to get season 4, which has been wrapped for about a year, and then this season 5 will be in 27. So it's weird, it's jarring, because back under the old model, a show used to wrap production, take a little summer break, and then come right back, and then they started to produce in midsummer would be out in the fall, like with TNG.
Yeah.
But now it's just, and again, it's a different time. But we've got some final casting that rounds out chronologically.
This is the final casting that they're telling us for now.
Right. That it rounds out chronologically what would be considered the season 1 TOS cast, meaning it does not include Chekhov. But we're talking about casting for Sulu and Dr. McCoy.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got two faces, one of which is not familiar to me, not familiar in a way, but another one is a seasoned actor who I'm very fond of. So they have cast veteran actor Thomas Jane as Dr. McCoy. Now, Thomas Jane has a career going back to the early 2000s or the late 90s. He was the second actor to portray the Punisher, Marvel's The Punisher, in a film in 2004, which was not terrible. I don't recall a ton about it. But it was in I had an early role in Boogie Nights, which was a great Paul W.S. Anderson movie from the late 90s. Might not be up your alleyway, but it's one that I enjoy very much. But was in films like Deep Blue Sea, The Predator, The Thin Red Line, which is a World War II film, and The Mist, which is a Stephen King movie that I've mentioned more than once. It's probably my favorite. He was the star of that film. So to me, this is big. I mean, he also
has most recently, of note, been in The Expanse as
The Expanse. Yeah, another show that eventually I'll circle around to.
Oh, it's a great show
because people absolutely love it. And then an actor named Kai Murakami has been cast as Sulu. Looking at his face, I think they nailed it. But I am not familiar with him. It seems like he is worked with the Royal Shakespeare Company and has been in My Neighbor Toro. Which is that's a big anime production, is it not? I think
yes, but he was doing a stage production of that.
Oh, that's those two things are together. Excuse me. And another stage of it. Really a serious stage actor,
and then he's done some motion capture for Ubisoft with Assassin's Creed and Rise of the Ronin. So it's not like he has done that sort of capture acting, because for those who aren't familiar, motion capture acting, like you are acting the scene, it's just the character is digitally recreated later.
Right. But but using your free, watch Avatar. All I'm saying is they better have him in the blue shirt, staff physicist, Lieutenant Sulu, not Lieutenant Sulu flying the ship, because that's not what he did.
We'll see.
Yeah. I mean, logically, to pun intended. And I do love it at the end of this article. And again, the article will be posted in the show notes, so you can certainly have a look for yourself. They do give us a cast shot that has all of the principals that we know and that we're talking about joining in, and Chekhov, which, as I had mentioned, would not be a fit for being included in the series, as he did not join TOS till season 2. Doesn't mean he wasn't around, but he was also you get the feeling, and again, you could probably go back and look at your Star Trek encyclopedia and find out, he may have been in Starfleet Academy at the time that, the Enterprise was being handed over to Kirk. I hope, and again, we will learn in 2 years' time or a year and a half's time when this finally rolls out, that their inclusion will be kind of small. And do keep in mind that Dr. McCoy was not the chief medical officer, or chief surgeon, as I believe he was referred to. When TOS launched, it was another character called Dr. Mark Piper, who was there for what was the second pilot and the first appearance of Captain Kirk. So
now the question is, are we going to see him?
Who's to say? It could be one of these. Maybe McCoy signed on, and you know what they could do? Here's a little headcanon for me. What if McCoy jumps on, and then there's some kind of family emergency which results in he and his wife splitting up? And remember his daughter Joanna?
Yep.
And he has to leave. Piper comes in, and then it's explained at a later time or something that McCoy came back. I think it would be cool to find a way to loop that back around again. But yeah, I will admit that my interest in the Star Trek Year One has softened as time gone by, because I become more embittered by the why can't we, move forward. And maybe watching Starfleet Academy, which is moving the franchise forward chronologically and, somewhat thematically, then I'm more interested in stories like that, as opposed to just saying, it kind of turns into some of the gripes that I and you to some extent have had about Star Wars. It's like we're stuck in this one little time period, and every single nook and cranny and every day of the week has to be explored. I've softened on my like burning desire to, well, let's do four more years or so many more years of Kirk and TOS. Maybe it's, I would really like to think it's just time to move on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I agree. But anyway, I'm excited about Thomas Jane just because he's an actor who I enjoy very much. This other actor sounds like he is an absolute pro, and he's been in a lot of great stuff. So I will be interested to see, again, 18 months from now, what those contributions look like. So that's, but this late announcement and the fact that they just wrapped production could just mean that their roles are.
I would imagine that they probably make an appearance in like the last couple scenes of the final episode. I mean, I could be wrong, but that's my gut.
I mean, it absolutely makes sense to me. So, well, good. We will learn about that. I would imagine there's not a ton more to say about that. And again, we don't even have a street date, which we're expecting to happen this year in 2026 for the fourth season of Strange New Worlds. But
I mean, I think the last season dropped sometime in July, so it might be around then.
It's a summer thing. That's the vibe I got. And it's the only, once Starfleet Academy is over, it's the only other television, or really other kind of Trek that we're going to really expect to see this year.
Unless they've managed to do a secret project that no one knows about, which is unlikely.
Right. Well, it was so funny, and we'll get into this when we talk about the movies, when we talk about the center seat later in the show. But the way that they produced Star Trek 4 in early 86, and it came out at like Thanksgiving of the same year is staggering to me, because it's just not something that happens anymore. But anyway, we'll get more into that later. But yeah, more news on that as it comes, without a doubt. So, all right. This is our last random episode for a while. We're going to be spending, and plus there's a bye week next month because April and I go on the cruise again. So not recording while we're gone. And Peter, I really, really, really want to get you and your brother on the cruise. I'm telling you. We'll talk about this off pod, but there's if you buy, if you go rob a bank. If you buy in advance, it's a lot cheaper. But go rob, Oh, no, wait, this could be evidence of that. Okay, I didn't say that. I take it back. But at any rate, this will be the last random episode we do for a while, because we'll get into talking about Starfleet Academy. But we're back in Deep Space Nine territory. This episode was chosen at random by friend of the show and contributor, who I talk about comics with largely here on the main SFU podcast, Kurt Krug. This is season 5, episode 9, The Ascent. So trapped on an inhospitable world, Quark and Odo must work together to survive. Meanwhile, Nog returns to the station from Starfleet Academy. Written by Ira Stephen Bear and Robert Hewitt Wolf, so two of the mainstays, the powerful dudes, and directed by Alan Craker, who is one of the very big directors of the era. Yeah, so you've got Major Town. This aired the week of November 25, 1996. Remember, this was obviously in syndication, so it was as your local station broadcast it. Here in Grand Rapids, Michigan, this was broadcast by Fox 17, which is the station my mother worked at. So I always had, but it didn't help me. I never had the inside track, but it always felt
boo.
Yeah, I know. It was kind of a bummer. So, all right, let's get into this episode, and then we'll circle back. I do have some kind of fun trivia and stuff like that. But Peter, take it away. Talk to me about this episode.
All right. Well, this episode has two major, like an A and B story.
Right.
Your A story is, I mean, as best as I can tell, the A story is Odo and Quark.
Right. Yeah, I agree.
So, I mean, it's the name of the episode. So,
right.
So Odo is taking Quark to a hearing on another planet far away.
In a runabout, which is dumb.
In a runabout, which is a bad idea. Eventually, he discovers why that's a bad idea, which is quite funny, because apparently the grand jury told him nothing.
Yeah.
Which he leads Quark on, like, oh, I know everything. You're in trouble. You're going to go to jail. It's like, no, he's a witness against the Orion Syndicate, which is funny. So they try to kill him and they damage the runabout. There's a lot of really just hilarious interpersonal shenanigans on the runabout of Odo and Quark poking at each other, which is just
right.
great.
Yeah.
And back on the station, the whole shtick is Nog has moved back in for basically an internship.
Yeah.
Back on Deep Space
the
Nine.
year abroad. Which is,
the Navy does this all the time, where they send people out to ships and like, hey, you're gonna do this, do that, and learn how the ships operate and all this.
And it was akin to like in Star Trek 2, the Enterprise was a training ship. So, but it was all cadets who have been like, here's your your year 3 crews or whatever.
Yeah.
Now, amazingly, he gets sent back home, which seems kind of weird.
Yeah,
but Sisko has influence. I'm sure he made it happen, and he doesn't really talk about it. But otherwise, it does seem kind of weird that it would just be like, and we're going to send you right back home. I mean,
Sisko was the main one who sponsored him to get into the academy, so it could have been like Sisko being like, hey, I want to make sure that I'm checking in on him and all that.
Yeah, and he's a captain. He's an important guy. So plus, it works for the it works for the story. I had some early notes about, because the cold open is it's Sisko and Jake, and Jake's being all like, "Yeah, I'm moving out," and he's packing this suitcase, which is basically looks like a storage tub with a handle, and he's like, he's packing the most random bullshit, like just throwing stuff in there, and he says, "Look, it'll close. Look, it closed." He packs it up, and it's absolutely not closed. So I'm just like, it's already proof that Jake is like the world's most typical dumbass teenager. I thought
that is definitely what they were going for.
Yeah, mission accomplished. So we move forward, and he's on the runabout, and we get probably the first maybe the second or third act of Odo and Quark having a lot of back and forth. And remember, this time it took me a minute to remember, this was during the time that Odo was a solid. So that happened at the end of season 4. It gets resolved like 3/4 of the way through season 5, which is what we're in.
I think it gets resolved like 5 or 6 episodes from now.
Right. After the uniforms change, which is again, this is the last episode. And that's one of the notes where we have the OG DS9 uniforms, which continue to live on in Voyager for the rest of that run, making Voyager the only show that never changes its uniforms for its entire run, unless I'm very much mistaken. Every other show had little pips and tweaks to it.
Enterprise had some had some tweaks.
Yeah, but it's funny because only at the very end.
I think there may have been a color palette switch a little bit. Between 2 and 3, but outside of that, other than that, it's just the finale with the weird things.
The other thing, the main jumpsuit of the Voyager in this first version of DS9 didn't change, but the undershirts. It's funny because if you're a cosplayer, there's a particular vendor that sells a lightish medium gray one, and then one that's very kind of turquoise purple, because the turquoise purple one tended to show up first season of Voyager and like the 3rd season of DS9, and then
Generations.
And that's probably where it came from. Because remember, in Generations, both Geordi and Riker were borrowing those DS9 jumpsuits, because it was Frakes was wearing Sisko's, and then LaForge was wearing O'Brien's. So but anyway, I digress. Getting a little into it. I do love, this is like one of the many mentions when Quark is talking about the Holo program Vulcan Love Slave. I'm like, I want to see it. I'm sorry.
What is this thing?
I'm very interested.
The other thing that I thought was hilarious was that Quark offers to teach Odo Fizbin, which is a completely fictional game that Captain Kirk made up.
How did he know about
piece of the action? So it's like, did Kirk just come back and like, I'm bullshitted all of these rules. Hey, Mr. Spock, do you remember all these rules I bullshit? And then they made the actual game. Or
could be.
Or Quark just happens to know because Nog was talking about some Starfleet history, and he's like, you know what? I'm going to troll Odo so hard, I'm going to make up a game that doesn't exist because he's not going to want to play it anyway.
Exactly. Oh my God. So then we get into, and we're kind of obviously going back and forth with the A and B story. Quark's super Ferengi hears a ticking. They move a panel. They find out that there's a bomb there. They manage to
ticking noise.
Yeah. Do they try to beam it out and then it blows up in transit and then it it doesn't blow the ship up because they're able to crash.
It blows up through the he directs the explosion through the transporter buffer is how they describe it.
Which saves their lives, but it also cripples the ship.
But it completely wrecks the ship.
The absolute worst landing, because it's funny when you look at the landing, it's like it looks like a you lent your drunk uncle your car because it's like it's cropped up on a rock, and it's they in the crash. They had an explosion that destroyed almost all their supplies.
I mean, it's not a Tuvok or Chakotay landing where your nacelles are like 500 yards away.
Yeah, right.
So.
Yeah, it was one of those any landing you can walk away from. But they crashed on what's basically, and there's some notes about this too. But they crashed on what is basically like in northern Michigan kind of setting where the sun is out and it's pretty, but it's like 10 degrees.
Cold. Yeah.
Fahrenheit. Yes, it's not good. But back on the station, we've gone full. This is the kind of the Odd Couples episode where there's a little bit. It's certainly more dire with Odo and Quark trying to get through their mission, which is they have to hike up this mountain with this transmitter, and it's Quark that figured out, hey, if we climb all the way up this mountain, we have this transmitter and we can push a button and
which is quite funny because Odo's like, oh, you went back there to fix it. Yeah, but it wasn't working. So your solution was to tear it out of the wall. Well, if we take it out, then we can use it.
Right, exactly. So Quark's kind of got a little more solid head on his shoulders. But back at the station with Nog and with Jake, it just turns into, reminding me of my freshman year at MSU where I bounced around roommates a little bit. But I got this weird kid from Chicago. No, it was not Captain Shaw. He was a dipshit from Chicago. I don't remember this guy's name, but he was just kind of an animal. Like I came back from a weekend once and opened the door. He's sitting in a beanbag chair watching the TV, which was mine, which was on the windowsill, eating, I shit you not, sardines out of a can, which I didn't even know was, but I wish you could see the face that Peter made. But it reminded me of that. He was a savage, where you kind of learn that Jake is just kind of an animal. And again, the level of his messiness, is just comically, like there's one scene where Nog is walking through bitching at him, and Nog's coming off shift. So let's say it's like 5 o'clock, and Jake has been sitting in their quarters all day, and he's writing or he's looking at a pad, and he's got clothes strewn all over the place, which Nog says, these weren't here this morning. And Jake's like, well, man's got to live. I'm like, what did you do? Why is there a shirt hanging out of the replicator? It was like they just kind of
there's a shirt hanging out of the replicator, and there's like socks hanging off of Nog's bed. Like, what are you doing?
I know. Is this how you get, like, these are all your pajamas and you undress by going blah, 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 blah. It just doesn't make any sense. We do get, and this is what I dubbed the name of the episode thus far, we do get, because Nog is like, we're going to get up at 4:30 in the morning to work out, which sounds completely insane. But then you see Nog working out in his cadet uniform. And this kind of reminds me of the famous video of RFK Jr. Doing push-ups in his jeans. It's the jeans at the gym guy. It was just like, you don't even have workout clothes. I mean, all your stuff comes out of a replicator. Plus, like, you want to go to work all sweaty and gross in your Starfleet onesie, which is another crap.
Maybe Ferengi don't sweat the same way.
Well, I do remember that line that Quark says when they're running from the Jem'Hadar in the Jem'Hadar's first appearance, and he says, "Exercise makes me sweat." So I guess they do sweat, but maybe Nog doesn't. Who's to say? But it's very. Then it's revealed that Odo kind of sort of soft pedaled the charges so he could arrest Quark for being part of the Orion Syndicate. And then Quark says, well, they wouldn't have tried to kill me if I was a member. I'm a witness. They're trying to kill me as a witness because I know some names, which that never gets addressed again. So it's like, if they ever try to kill him again, we don't ever see this. Yeah, exactly. And they don't know if even after they get rescued, which obviously happens. Obviously it happens because they're two main characters of the show. I just absolutely don't understand how Jake could trash the quarters in 9 hours by throwing clothes around like he was a bull in a china shop. And the line, I die of embarrassment wearing those pajamas, which I agree, because he's wearing a Starfleet onesie. It kind of reminds me a lot of what Wesley wore in seasons 2 and 3 of TNG.
The cadet uniform for this particular period isn't that great.
Yeah, because it's gray. It's gray and onesie, and it has like leg pockets, which look handy.
Yeah, but it does get a little better. Like the cadet uniform that they have in Valiant. Defiant.
Yeah, Valiant. There you go.
Looks better because it's basically the duty uniform, just colors inverted, which is what the uniform was. Well, similar to what it was in TNG, where it was a black jumpsuit with department color.
And really even similar to what you saw was the TOS cadet uniform, which you saw in Flashback with Finnegan, who was Kirk's nemesis. It's just the
duty uniform.
Yeah, it's just the onesie, but it's like a shiny metallic gray. But like you said, the one in Valiant was an inverse, and it was like if you smushed together the Monster Gray and the Voyager uniform into one, you would get that cadet uniform. But yeah, we get a nice he and Quark, Odo and Quark finally have it out, and they get in a fight and they tumble down the hill. And the way Odo breaks his leg, he does, like, we're watching Stranger Things right now, and we're in the 4th season where I don't know if you're familiar. Did you watch Stranger Things?
Yeah, I just haven't seen the finale.
Oh, but where Vecna who's the main villain, is like killing people in their dreams, and their limbs get broken and stuff. Mm-hmm. That's what and I'm like, how would you even function if your leg was like, it looked like it was broken off? But
yeah, it was in a U shape. It was like,
exactly.
Like, it doesn't bend that way. That's Play-Doh leg. Like,
yeah, exactly. Which would be fine if he was not.
If he was a shapeshifter, it would make total sense. But it's like normal bodies don't bend like that and then look
and then you live, because you think a bend like that, you just have
you can live, like if you break the bone and it breaks the skin, like you can still live. It's just not going to be fun in the meantime.
And Quark does manage to put together the stretcher, and then we get a montage of him dragging him up the mountain, and
also we get a hilarious moment of you should just leave me here. No, I'm bringing you for food. If you die, I'm going to eat you.
Which, that totally tracks.
That makes sense. Yeah. It's just delivered with just Quark deadpan to Odo.
Yeah,
and you just sense the whole like, yeah, you got me into this. I'm gonna eat you.
Yeah, I'm gonna eat you.
Just so funny.
That's right. So yeah, then there's the montage. Back on the station, I did think there was kind of a fun moment of Rom and Sisko. They're both in the Replimant. They're having a coffee, and they're talking about their kids. And Rom's like, because the roommates finally have the falling out, so Nog has moved back in with his dad, and he's like, well, I don't really love having him at home because he's busting my balls all the time. He looked at my toolkit, said it was a mess, and he said he was going to put me on report, which I'm just like, really, dude? I mean, like, Nog's kind of taking it to a place it doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
And then, Sisko hasn't done much with Jake, but he's like, Jake he's a pain in the ass. I get it. He says, but I've got a solution. And then he plays the captain card. He marches back in there, talks to Jake, and he's like, well, the bad news is station regulations. You can't have a double suite if you're one person, so you got to move out. He's like, whatever, I'll get I'll have a single. And he's like, well, I don't have any singles, so you got to find another roommate. But the good news is I got a solution. And he marches Nog back in there, and he says, well, I don't really want to do this. He says, well, I'm your captain, shut up, and I'm your father, shut up. You're going to do this, work it out. And then they do. Then they work it out, which I think is funny. So, the whole thing is played for laughs. There's not a lot of big stakes involved in that. And then, and again, you flash back to obviously the A story, and that they're both going to live, but it seems really super dire. And then and so they do. Odo is sitting. I think he's sitting making a record. I don't know what he's making a recording into. Maybe touches comm badge.
It's on his comm badge. Yeah.
He's like, I'm gonna record this for posterity. And if I die, cremate me and shoot me into the wormhole, whatever. And then he beams out. And then you get the only scene of the episode where you see Dax, Worf, No, you see O'Brien on the stage and Bashir. So you see Dax, Worf, and Bashir. They're on the Defiant. They rescue these guys. And then we get to wrap up my thoughts, you only see it in the Defiant sickbay, the Starfleet equivalent of like an IV drip. It's like a cone-shaped thing with lights that go up and down. That's obviously like an IV. I don't remember seeing that absolutely anywhere else in Star Trek. I think that's like just a DS9, and you don't see it back on the station either. So unless, I could be wrong, but I'm just like, I remember seeing that the couple of times you see the Defiant sickbay, which is maybe 5 or 6 times total. I just think it's a weird prop. You know what I mean? So,
I don't think it doesn't show up anywhere else. So
yeah. So, but then they wrap up. This is the second episode this season. because I remember it was something Astra joked about when we first saw this 30 years ago, where they end the episode having a hearty chuckle, and he says it's kind of like the way they ended episodes of He-Man, where they were like, ha 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 ha, because Quark and Odo are both half dead, but they're having a laugh about I hate you and I hate you too. The end.
It's kind of how TOS ends a lot of times.
Yeah. Exactly. And P.S. the Bashir that saved him is a changeling, but we'll get to that in a later episode.
Yeah, surprise.
Yeah, surprise. So before we get to the fun facts, a rating is a must for me. Great episode. It's a lot of fun.
It's a fun one.
I gave it a 9 out of 10. It's not a bottle show because half of it is bottle show, meaning using existing sets and whatever, because the other half is on location. But both of those, but the whole episode total was, even the parts of it that were not lighthearted were still kind of lighthearted. A lot of the banter back and forth, because it was, kind of odd couple on a different scale, where one was a little more life and limb, ostensibly, and the other one was just kind of fun. So I loved it. It was fun, and this was really before we tilted into the show being very serious, because the Dominion conflict was about to kick into gear with the kind of that two-parter. Where the Cardassians end up joining the Dominion. That happens just episodes after this. Yep. This was our last kind of romp with something lighthearted before things get serious. What about you?
I thought that this episode is just fun. I quite enjoy any episode where Quark and Odo just have at each other the whole time, because they're just ridiculous every single time. It was one of the, like, when I first started watching Deep Space Nine, that was one of the big things that actually got me to stick around, was Quark and Odo's just like seething loathing for each other. just kind of sits there. I mean, they do, at the end, they do end up liking each other. But just that relationship is one of my favorites. Because they're just, they're frenemies, and it's just great.
Yeah. Right.
And then Jake and Nog, I've always liked Nog. Jake is a putz, but I like having how the two of them work together. So it's just a fun episode. And then Cisco being, I'm your dad, I'm your captain. Sit down, shut up, and deal with it.
I guess the final word. Scene. And Nog is, you give Nog a lot of credit because of any of the characters in the show. He's the one who had the most wide-ranging arc, without a doubt, because he started out as a hooligan delinquent, and then by the end of the series, he's a Starfleet lieutenant with a fake leg that he lost in war, and he's an incredible character. And R.I.P. to Aaron Eisenberg, who left us a number of years ago. It was good stuff. So no, I enjoyed it. All right, some fun facts. And this kind of a 1-2 punch, and this, I alluded to this a little bit. So the outdoor scenes were filmed at Mount Whitney, which is a 14,500 foot tall mountain in Central California, and the crew stayed in Lone Pine. And again, not being from California, I don't know where it is off the top of it, but that's quite an expensive shoot from LA to move a crew up there and do that. So they sunk a couple of bucks into this, which is probably why the other half of it was a bottle show, that they used existing sets and existing characters, because they could save a couple of bucks. Odo, I love this, and this was one of my remarks. I'm like, well, he's never been to the Midwest. Odo's inquiry of how can it be so cold when the sun is shining was added on set because of the excellent weather during production. It had temps as high as 65 degrees Fahrenheit or 18°C, making the shoot extremely uncomfortable for both Armin and Renee, because they're in heavy makeup, and they were wearing extra layers because they were so cold. And it sounds like there were some photographic tricks by the DP.
Filters and lenses.
Yeah, filters and lenses to make it look a little icier, and then kind of tinting down the orangeness of the setting sun. Real Hollywood magic. And I mentioned this was the final episode of the what they called Uniform B, because it coexisted with the TNG uniform for a while. So that is the black jumpsuit with the colored shoulders, indicating department color, which it was in Star Trek Generations, and it ran the entire length of Voyager. Now we do see this uniform again, as I had mentioned, with Dr. Bashir wearing it, because he was kidnapped by the Dominion at some point prior to this episode and tossed in a prison, and gets revealed in the episode In Purgatory Shadow / By Inferno's Light, which is a great two-parter that we will get to when we start doing our two-parters, because it's one of my absolute favorites. And then you do see it in the flashback scenes of the finale when everybody's having their fond remembrances. But yeah, that's about it. So yeah, Armin Shimmerman, very, very fond of this episode as well. Talking about he said the onset medic had actually prepared for the altitude reactions to ensure Armin could shoot. But he's quoted as saying the medic's the hero of that episode because the makeup made it really difficult for the two of them. They soldiered on through two true professionals of the industry. So pretty cool stuff. I like it. All right. Well, let's move on and tackle the next two segments of The Center Seat, which is available on Prime, Peacock, Roku, and other channels. I do have a note that's very important that, Peter, I mentioned this to you in text yesterday. We're talking about episode 5 and episode 6. I had never seen episode 5 before, and I didn't realize that because when this came out back in 2021, I just watched it straight through. And when I was looking through, like, you know how it is, your progress bar always stays constant when you go back to something, even if you watched it years ago. On a streamer and on many streamers, and certainly at least this case on Prime. So I went, it's episodes kind of 1 through 10. I thought, it's 10 parts. But then there was an episode 11, which I'm like, we've not watched this one. It's a picture of Catherine Hicks, who is Gillian Taylor in Star Trek 4, staying there in a free frame of her. And I'm like, and I'm looking at my notes and I'm going back to Memory Alpha, which is where we tagged these little walkthroughs I read to you. And episode 5 is listed as episode 11. And then episode 6 is listed as episode 5. So I was really thrown because it took me a minute. I'm going back and forth and I'm like, I kept scrolling until I got to this episode 11. So if you do happen to watch this on Prime, after you finish episode 4, which is what we talked about in our last episode, scroll forward to what is listed as episode 11. And then you'll get it in continuity because that one talks about.
If you watch it on Plex, however, it is in the correct place.
Gotcha. And maybe it is on Peacock as well because I didn't check it, but that's really bizarre. And I wonder
it either got finished and aired later, or whoever built the database on Amazon needs to go back and take a look.
Yeah, I feel like I should tell somebody about this, but it's also been 5 years and maybe nobody cares. I would feel like I would tell Brian Bulk Weiss about it because
if you let him know, maybe he has pull with them. Like, hey, you got my shot. I might
drop him a ping, and he may say, "Yeah, I know, and there's nothing I can do." But I was kind of chagrined by that because it kind of throws off the fact that this is really painted in pretty beautiful chronology. You're kind of walking, certainly for those first 6, you're walking through that, and then they tend to split things up as they go on forward. So, but yeah, we're going to talk about episodes, what are correctly episode 5 and episode 6. Episode 5 is Whales, God, and Pepto-Bismol. The mid-1980s saw 3 directors of note helm Star Trek features. Leonard Nimoy came back to save the whales in Trek's biggest box office hit to date, because I believe that Star Trek 09 may have outperformed this.
09 outperformed all of the older films by a lot.
So, but we're not. We'll say Trek's biggest TOS hit, really, or original, whatever it is. You know what I mean?
Classic Star Trek.
Classic Star Trek. Followed by William Shatner helming the crew search for God. We'll get into that, and the return of Nick Meyer, who was actually there all along, which is pretty interesting. For the original crew's final adventure, one drenched in pink Klingon blood. And then we jump into episode 6, Q for Q. 1987, Paramount decided to return to its roots, television. Star Trek: The Next Generation would become the first hour-long scripted show sold directly to the syndicated television market, so making history. Paramount's gamble paid off. Who hasn't heard of Picard, Data, and Worf? And what you will hear on this network in a couple of weeks is our interview with David Gerrold, which covers quite a bit of what he talked about in this. And I will tell you, it is not for the faint of heart. Because David Gerrold, very, very interesting guy. And I think he'll be in one of our spotlight interviews that comes out here later in January. If you're listening to this in the future, you'll find it there. Just search his name. And it's a very interesting conversation. But anyway, let's get into it. So episode 5, talk to me.
So episode 5, we get Voyage Home, which everybody loves Voyage Home,
right?
The one with the whales.
Normal people like it, so to speak.
I liked how it kind of ended that discussion of being like, and Star Trek 4 is like the one that I hear a lot of Trekkies use to introduce their friends to Star Trek, and it's like, Yep. Been there, done that.
It's very accessible. And I had heard that they do a bit about an early draft of it had to do with Eddie Murphy, who was Paramount's biggest and name star at the time.
Yep.
I would
he wanted to be in it.
Yeah, well, he's an enormous trekker, which I think is totally awesome. And I would love, and I'm sure it exists somewhere, to see if anything was ever put to paper on that. I would be curious, and I can't admit.
I'm sure there's some draft scenes somewhere. Like, for instance, I have all of the draft. If you're looking for a completely different thing, Star Trek Insurrection has a book written by Michael Piller that chronologically shows you the entire production process of the script of Insurrection. Okay. So it shows like, here's the original story draft, here's some letters back and forth between different people and notes and stuff. So you see the whole process. So if you can get your hands on those sorts of things, then that would show you. But again, we don't have that sort of exhaustive archive of what happened with 4.
Right.
I mean, we don't. Paramount holds on to everything, so it probably exists.
And if it's something they can release and make some money out of it, or they sell it to people.
But based on some of the stuff that's told in this, they probably don't want to release a lot of that.
Yeah, exactly. But it's interesting. So they figure out they can't do the Eddie Murphy thing, and they throw it out. And who comes to the rescue? Nicholas Meyer, who we interviewed him about this time.
What was really funny is they're like, hey, we have a script, and well, do you want to show it to me? No.
Please. Oh, I'd like to read it. Please don't.
Yeah.
I think was like I said, we talked to Nick about a year ago. Super nice guy. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how he it was involved in all 3 of these films, or at least he was tangentially kind of touching bits and pieces of that. They talk about the fact how they kind of got rid of Robin Curtis, who is someone else that I'm hopeful that we'll get an interview with one day. I do actually have her contact information. I have to reach out. But yeah, about the cut draft of her being impregnated by Spock on the Genesis planet. That story goes way back, but they didn't want to necessarily tie the character back into the other stuff that was going on. And they talk a lot about Harve Bennett, who was the guy who was really the heart and soul of all of the TOS films, ending somewhat unceremoniously with Star Trek 6, which we'll talk about in a moment. That was eliminated out. Even Ron Moore, who we revere greatly here and would very much like to have on the spotlight one day, talks about how he kind of thinks that sucks. He really likes that.
He was confused why they got rid of that. And to be fair, there have been lots of speculations and fan things about what happened to Saavik afterwards.
Right. There's lots of beta canon stuff about her.
The Unification 75015 or whatever it was.
Right.
They did make up to make her look even older, but they had.
She was included.
She returned as Saavik with Spock's son.
Right.
Interesting. I've seen fan comics. There's one running right now with Spock's son.
Right.
And the audio show that I help with, we had Saavik show back up for a brief.
And I believe, and I'd have to look at Memory Alpha, that something was included with the fact that the ship that was kind of the ancestor of the Connie 3, or basically the Neo, what was the Titan, was called the Shangri-La, and it was captained by her. I think
that's a beta canon thing. Yeah, that is.
I thought it was somewhat canonized in all the little ships you saw.
Oh, one of those
canon. Which still makes it canon, like they did with the Leon Grace, with Uhura being captain of that ship,
and the NX refit. So there's some things that get canonized in the background, but I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I thought it was funny listening to Catherine Hicks, who again I mentioned was Dr. Gillian Taylor in this, kind of ragging on Shatner and saying he was obnoxious and finding ways to like photobomb all of like her, basically her close-ups and stuff. So the talk about the probe was funny too. How they were,
pretty funny.
How they, it was a big water heater, and then it was I love and again, hats off to Brian and his people at Nacelle, how they will just and Gates McFadden narrates all this, and she's terrific. How they kind of stuck in a picture of a water heater at that point. And then they said, well, I spray painted it matte black, and then I did, which kind of made it look greasy, and then we filmed it in such a way that it just seemed very much in shadow, even in space. I remember thinking, again, I also wrote, they started, because they mentioned the date on this, this went into production the day after my 10th birthday, so Feb 24, 1986. And it came out at Thanksgiving, which I find completely insane. So they were in production for 10, am I doing the math wrong? 9 months. This was the length of a pregnancy is how long it took for them to shoot and put this in theaters.
I mean, it's amazing, first of all. But secondly, shooting on location close to your production studio is pretty easy.
Yeah, exactly. Because they did shoot in San Francisco, which is obviously in California, though not right next to Paramount Studios.
It's not right there, but it's not that far.
But again, the location stuff was a handful. There were not a ton of outer space effects. There were some, but it was
a lot of the stuff happened inside buildings.
Yep.
And inside the in the interior of the bird of prey. So I mean, we looked at, they had a couple of behind the scenes shots. That exterior shot on Vulcan was done in a parking lot.
Right. And as was the scene of all of them when they crashed in the San Francisco Bay, that was done at the parking lot at Paramount.
Yep.
Which I believed was also where Moses parted the Red Sea in the Ten Commandments. I believe, which I think is fantastic. Ken Ralston, who is a visual effects guy who is involved in this, he ranked on Kirk's weird vision being artsy fartsy, and he hated it. The one where Kirk sees the heads and then there's a body falling towards Earth.
I always thought it was artsy fartsy and weird too. So I kind of agree with him.
Yeah, I was not super fan of that. And as a 10-year-old, I was like, what the hell is that?
Growing up as a kid watching it, you're just like, I don't know what this means. Like,
and it's like 45 seconds, and you're like, okay.
Adult, it's still like, I'm not sure what this means. Like, there's some meaning there. Like, and some of it's just like time is being weird, and that's the point of it. But it's at the same time, it's like, I could have done without this. This is just strange.
I don't need it. It's no joy for me. So, but so that was it, and it ended up being a big hit, which is great. And the films had been successful to this point, so naturally that green lights another film. And contractually, Bill Shatner had maneuvered his way into a directorship because Leonard did this one and he had done Star Trek 3, and he's like, now it's my time to shine.
Which I did appreciate that they did give him a little bit of kudos of having directed before, like TJ Hooker and some stuff. Because a lot of times when people tell this story, they're like, and Shatner, who really didn't have any directing experience, he did. Right. It just wasn't a ton.
And he hadn't really directed
he hadn't directed a feature film, and some of his directing style just didn't translate well to how films do things. Like my favorite bit from this, one of my favorite bits from this episode regarding his directing was they'd be shooting a scene and be like, okay, a couple of you just fall. No one would, because they hadn't rehearsed it. Like,
right, exactly.
When you're doing film, like you iterate to make sure that you get close to the same every time with a little bit of differences, so that you can be like, okay, well, I like that take better, I like this take better, and also so that you can cut between takes to use different bits in case there's like fuzzy lens on part of a take or whatever. So I thought that was interesting because it showed that Shatner can direct, and like when people were talking about him directing, like he was a really good director. He always like had the crew and the cast in mind. Like, he was very nice and kind. So like a lot of people try to say that the problems with Final Frontier was Shatner's directing. It wasn't. And I like that they kind of set this clear on this. But then we also get some, like, the other thing you also hear from Shatner's camp is that it was just the studio. And from this episode, we kind of get, it's a bit of a mixed bag as to whose fault it was for this. One of the things that really stood out to me, because I think we've talked about Final Frontier before. Maybe I don't remember if I did.
Yeah, we've covered it.
But like one of the things that whenever I talk about Final Frontier that I always complain about vehemently are the special effects.
Oh my god!
And this was eye-opening as to why. Like, I knew they didn't go with ILM, but I had no idea why, other than, like, in my head, it's like, you're just trying to sabotage the film. When you watch this, you're like, they weren't exactly trying to sabotage the film. They were trying to save a buck.
Yeah, but they went with, like, some dude. It reminds me great.
They went with a dude, like, not a major studio, a dude.
Right. It reminds me greatly of the fact I've talked about my family business before. My father and my stepmother ran our family business until my dad retired a number of years ago. And the business at that point was sports photography, large kids sports leagues, soccer, basketball, dance schools, whatever it is. And some of the biggest leagues that my dad did, and it was across the state of Michigan, would occasionally, we interviewed another guy and we're going to go with him this year. And I remember one story in particular. I can't remember if it was in Metro Detroit, which is where dad is, or if it was elsewhere in the state, because he did jobs over here as well in West Michigan. But there was a league. They dumped us. They had a different guy. And then after that happened, they begged my dad back, and my dad was like, knowing the answer to the question, was like, oh gosh, what happened? Guy showed up, was running 3 or 4 hours behind, and in the end of it took the money and was never heard from again. Like, just straight up ripped people off because it was just some dude who was doing it for way cheaper. And that absolutely brings me back to this, because it was like, okay, you have the best, and then you got a dude who will do it cheaper. And a dude doing it cheaper gave us this, and I have a comment that I got from Larry Nemechek overnight, because nice. I messaged him after I was watching this, because this had footage of the long ballyhooed Rockmen sequence. We get like
this was the first time that I actually saw a visible shot of this.
That's what I said to Larry. I said, Larry, I've had these home video releases for years and I've never seen the. Shame on me. He says, no, this has only popped out within the last like 5 or 6 years. So it's kind of like the footage that has never surfaced of Genevieve Bujold as Janeway, which I've seen some of it.
Like there's some of that
I've seen some of it.
Out.
And it's very like B camera, like it's her and Tim Russ, and they're delivering lines of dialogue, which obviously survived into what actually got made on screen when Kate Mulgrew took the role. But this I had never seen it. So thank you, Larry, for filling me in, because I felt like I was sleeping on this. It reminds me of kind of the motion wall that they talk about in Star Trek, the motion picture. Mm. I feel like that never got past previs, and I wasn't sure if this really existed. So I was excited to this. And as I had mentioned, Nick Meyer touched all of this, because when things were coming to an end, and they were like, we're not going to deliver this on time, they reach out to Nick Meyer. He says, will you step in and finish this? And he was like, no thanks.
Yeah. It was like, one, I just don't want to do it. And two, I'm not going to do that to Bill.
Yeah, and he's not going to put everything on the line. Yeah, exactly. And just think how Shatner would have reacted if they yanked this from him.
It would have been terrible.
It would have been an uproar. It would have been a bloodbath. So we get Ken Ralston. I think it was Ken Ralston who was still talking. Used one of my favorite expressions, trying to make the best of a bad situation, putting the lipstick on a pig.
Yeah,
that made me snort.
They were talking about the score on that one.
Oh, right. Yeah, they did. And so, they tried to really punch it up. But they were like, I remember the summer of '89, which was, and Peter, this is before your time. It was an enormous summer for films. Ghostbusters 2, Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Batman 1989, one of the most seminal films of all of fandom. And this. And this came out strong. And then it had a 60% drop week over week into so this was the first Star Trek film that was a bomb. Because while people talk about, oh my God, I thought the motion picture was so dumb, it was a huge success, because it had pent up fan demand that meant people went to go see it.
Yep.
Even if it was not.
It also didn't it was also pretty to look at.
Yeah.
Whereas Final Frontier is not, and that's part of the problem, because you can't, because special effects smooth over a lot of issues, not everything. Like, you can have a very pretty movie and the movie's still trash, but
oh my God, we talk about them all the time. Over on
there's so many of those. But motion picture, the story is kind of but it's so pretty to look at. The score is amazing. There's so much to just enjoy and experience.
Right.
Whereas Final Frontier, you're sitting here going, why? Oh, what am I looking at? Because
you're right.
The way I've described it, and sidebar, there's actually some people on YouTube that are redoing the special effects for Final Frontier to try to put it on par with the other films.
Really?
Yeah.
How interesting.
So that's interesting. But that's neither here nor there. But the special effects, to me, and they talked about this in the episode where they try to do a lot of things in camera. Now, you can do a lot of things in camera, and it's really neat if you're clever. But there's some things that just don't transfer well if you do that. And one of those things is the motion control starship movement and the lighting. And that is one of the things where this film particularly fails very badly, to the point where when I watch it, like the first time I watched it, I was like, did we go back to the special effects department that made TOS? Because it feels like that.
It was 1966 all over again.
And that's the sad thing about Star Trek V is it's got a TOS script that is, a little above average, but not amazing. But it's your run of the mill TOS script, very much in the vein of what Roddenberry would like. The crew goes and punches God in the face.
Right.
Because he like they even talk about that in the next episode, because that was Roddenberry's dead horse for the last 20 years of his life.
Right.
Which the more I read about Roddenberry, I understand, but I just let it go. Anyway, so we get a classic TOS story of going to meet God, and it's not him. And then we get the special effects to match, and it was just oh. Now the thing is, there's some really good character moments. Like, you can tell that Shatner understands the characters very well. He understands the three very well. So McCoy, Spock, and Kirk, because the character stuff that's done with those three, really, really well done. There's some really, really good stuff there. Which they don't really touch on in this documentary, but I just feel like it needs to be mentioned.
Right.
But everybody else is just kind of there, and doing bit parts. So we have Nichelle Nichols talks about how the fan dance, which is just painful. She talks about how that was unpredictable because sand doesn't like to stay stable, and so you might fall on your face.
Sand does what sand wants to do. Yeah.
But,
oh my god.
Final Frontier was just a disaster, and it's just interesting to learn how and why.
Right.
This
I totally agree.
Really opens it up, but oh boy.
Yeah, is correct. So then we move on to Star Trek VI, what became the Undiscovered Country. This was the end of Star Trek, but before it was the end of Star Trek and Harve Bennett, because Harve Bennett wanted his Starfleet Academy movie with the TOS characters recast, which is interesting because that's what Star Trek 09 is all about. But at the time, Roddenberry fought back, the studio fought back, and Harve said, "My time with Star Trek has come to an end. This is the hill I'm going to die on," and he left.
Yep, he did, which is because he was really, really good at what he did.
He was the guy, from Star Trek. He came on with Wrath of Khan and really helped Nick Meyer make it a success, and then he piloted through 3 and 4, and then suffered. It made an on-screen appearance in 5. He was Admiral Bob. That Kirk talks to at the beginning of the film. So, but when people you got to do what you got to do, and that's what he chose to do. But so they bring Nick Meyer back in, huge winning, except for those shitty Enterprise sets and the uniform errors, which I will just never get over. Those things about this film drive me nuts, like Valeris's screwed up uniform.
Oh, right, yeah.
And the terrible sets where, the modified TNG sets where they try to make it look like they're on a submarine with the doors that come down. It made me insane. I hated it, but did not take away from some things that were really revolutionary about the story, which was, this was your allegory to the collapse of the Soviet Union, the fall of the Berlin Wall. It happened in 89 and 91. This came out in the end of 91. And
I was alive for this one.
Yeah, way to go. It was a really pointed reference to the fact that the Enterprise crew was full of people that hated Klingons and didn't mind talking about it with each other. That was like, okay, these people are actually human, because this kind of sounds like some of the things that we hear in the real world.
I thought it was interesting how we had Roddenberry pushing back on that, because there was some statement about the crew wouldn't be racist. And I thought that statement was one, I can see how that would be taken that way.
Right.
But two, whenever I watched Undiscovered Country, and maybe it's because I was growing up in the late 90s, and so it was a little different for me. But But whenever I watched Undiscovered Country, I didn't really get like the sense of racism per se. It was more of a, they've been killing us and they're awful.
Yeah.
And so like there are enemies. And so like, why would we trust them? Like they've tried, because, the Organian peace treaty and all these things that's been broken before. And Kirk has a personal score because Klingons killed his son.
And he comes full circle on that, which, he comes full circle on it in the end by saving, the life
and he saves
the president of the Federation and at the Khitomer conference, and then has his moment.
And he saves Azit Bor as well. So
and has his moment with her.
But it's like, it's one of those things where like, I see why Roddenberry would think that way. I don't think that was Meyer's intent. Yeah. And two, at least for me, it doesn't come across that way.
Right.
So...
Yeah. The thing that I didn't know anything about was the fact that Nick Meyer, they tried to cut the budget on him and he walked through the math, and then he was going to go to the head of the studio, whose name is now escaping me, who promised him the $30 million. Yeah. And they had a meeting, and Nick walked through the money again, and then the guy cancels the movie, which obviously got undone. But I'm like, wow,
yeah, I didn't. This guy
wouldn't. Yeah, this guy wouldn't budge over $5 million. But eventually, he did, or whatever it is that they did.
Fired.
I know that they. Yeah,
the guy in charge left, and then the new guy called him up. It's like, I hear you need some more money. It's like, how much?
I need $5 million.
Yeah, done. Yeah. You're back on.
Exactly.
It's like,
right, exactly.
Wow.
They do a funny bit about the Klingon blood, which was just Pepto-Bismol. I thought about that when I saw this when I was 16 years old.
Yeah,
that was an easy takeaway. They wrapped the episode up by saying that this came out right around Christmas of '91, as I recall.
Yeah, it was December 12th, I think of.
And Gene Roddenberry passed away at the end of October of '91, and so he was ill when he saw a cut of the movie, and when he was in a wheelchair and they said they were rolling him out, he said, thanks, I really liked it. And days later, he came back with a laundry list of notes of things he wanted to change. And within a couple of days of that, he had passed away. Which I did not know about. Or I was like, because again, I didn't see this 5 years ago when it came out. So a lot of this was a very first watch for me of stuff that I didn't know. So this, much like the episode about Star Trek, the motion picture, was the most eye-opening for me because it had a lot of stuff that I had never heard about, as opposed to when we get into episode 6, which has a lot of notes from our conversation, which you may not have heard yet with David Gerald, which comes out in late January 2026 on our Spotlight. So we get right into it because they're winding on episode 5, and our friend Larry Lamachek is throughout the series, but he's the one who comes on and says, hey, Paramount's like, we want to get back on TV. We've been showing these reruns for 15 years. People love them, but we need something new, and that leads us into the development of a brand new series that Gene started brainstorming, but then we get the lawyer, whose name I didn't write down, but I'm just going to call him the lawyer because David, I don't want to spoil too much if you're not listening to our interview, David goes on exhaustedly
in this episode too.
In this episode too, where this lawyer who was Gene's right-hand man clearly passed away of a brain tumor, but David remarks that if I could have, I would have sent a get well card to the brain tumor. He just really loathed this guy. And that's a pretty cold thing to say. But then again, with all of the things that we hear, holy cow.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, to play devil's advocate just for a second, at the beginning of the episode, they give you the reason as to why Roddenberry had the lawyer, and it was because Paramount was telling him that Star Trek wasn't worth anything.
Right. Of which he brought in this lawyer who, let's face it, he was a
masterful weasel in the sense that he weaseled his way into getting Paramount to not read a contract correctly so that he would get access to all of the books on Star Trek, the franchise,
he had auditing rights,
not Star Trek TNG, Star Trek, the franchise. And so he was able to find out that Paramount was not actually giving him the percentage that he was owed, or Shatner, evidently, which was interesting.
Shatner was a 5% stakeholder, Roddenberry 20%. So this resulted in Roddenberry getting a brand new Rolls Royce delivered to him on the lot,
and getting a lot of money,
check for $1 million.
Yep,
and probably that much more. So you're right.
For that, he was very helpful.
Great lawyer.
But after that, holy buckets, man.
Yeah, this guy did everything, including jerking around David. And jerking around poor Dorothy Fontana.
Like, he tells her,
who's a legend.
You need to, like, here, you can write the novelization for the pilot. And then after she writes it, like, oh, no, we're going to give it to David. Which was just like,
because the lawyer had a seat at the table. Gene gave the lawyer the seat at the table.
Which I was happy how David got rid of him. Which was just like, he reports him to the Screenwriters Guild. It's like, this guy he's not part of the guild. He doesn't have any credits. Right. He shouldn't be here.
Right. And then he was escorted away.
Unceremoniously boxed up and sent home.
Right. So again, we're talking about the very early kind of pre-production, but they walk through a lot of exciting bits. I'd love to see Denise Crosby, who I've met several times.
Yeah, she's great
on the radio. But she talks about the phaser. She says, "First time I pulled on my phaser, I made a buzzing noise when I pointed it at something because it looks like a remote control."
Yeah, and then they said that's kind of the sound that it kind of made. And it's like,
exactly, Patrick Stewart and the hair test, which is like the bag of the box of like wigs. I've heard that story. It's pretty awesome. And a lot of people who love the show, who were not around at the time, don't realize that this show was reviled when it was announced. It was not my Star. It introduced the not my Star Trek, which people do say about shows today. But of course, anybody doesn't like anything. It's not mine. It's not real. Blah, blah, blah.
But thankfully, with newer stuff, at least as a general rule, aside from the fringes, you do have people who are like, those of us who don't like a thing. At least my playbook is, I will watch it and I will determine if it is good on its own merit. So
for yourself, for your own opinion, which is, yes, there's too many people out there who think that they're master and commander of what is good.
Now, I am. In your opinion, you are allowed to say this isn't good Star Trek or this isn't Star Trek. That's completely fine. It's just you have to realize that not everyone's going to agree with you.
Right, and we have a podcast.
So there's that too.
We can say what we want. They do dip into the and it's funny. It's like TNG got out its worst of its worst within the first 10 episodes, because episode 4 was the Code of Honor, where they go to the Africa planet, and it's every stereotype you could possibly imagine. Everybody was like, I can't believe we're doing this. I think Will Wheaton was on talking. Larry was back saying, had this been later in the series, I think there would have been
pushed back.
It would have gone away.
It still boggles my mind how that thing got made. Like, it's just so bad.
They talk about costuming, and they take a swing at that season 1 jumper. I get it. There was a scripting error here. They did say the 2-piece uniform came out in season 2.
They did say that, and I was like, that's not right, my buzz.
Yeah. Now, in fairness, in April Chuck says, "I love you how you write about shit like that." She's like, "That's just nobody else would pick that up." But in fairness, it would have been developed during the production of season 2, but it didn't appear till season 3, unless it
it may have been actually worked on in the summer in between.
Yeah.
So because it wasn't fully done when they got to season 3.
Exactly. There's a very strong point made, and this was kind of made a little bit throughout. We didn't have Marina come on.
No.
She was the only one of the 3 original kind of principal female characters not in this segment. Maybe she'll show up later. I don't know. I don't recall. But obviously Gates is narrating, and she's interviewed, and then Denise is back for several time. It was they're kind of throwing Maurice Hurley under the bus, and kind of rightfully so. He was the guy who got rid of Gates at the end of season 1. Mm-hmm. They portray him as kind of a hacky, sexist writer who wrote women very poorly. In a lot of ways, it didn't really turn around throughout the course of the series. The way, let's say, we had strong female characters in Deep Space Nine, for example. TNG didn't really, in my opinion, achieve that, and that is not a knock against those three actresses, or even against the writing staff in general, because there's so many talented people there.
Part of it was just the product of its time.
Very true.
And some of it is also just modern sensibilities looking back at another time.
So. Right. Now, it is right in this time period that Whoopi Goldberg comes on as Guinan, probably the strongest female presence on the show as far as in a lot of ways his performance and what is delivered. I'm very, very fond of the character. Crusher returns in season 3 because Maurice Hurley said, well, it's either her or me, and everybody wanted her back. Diana Muldaur came on as Dr. Pulaski. I think she gets a bad rap, but I did find it's very interesting that she comes back and says, I was glad to be done. So it was not a good experience.
Yeah,
and you can respect
I thought that was interesting in part because like you can hear, I think it's Brian in the background. Can I ask why? And she's like, no.
Oh, I wonder if that was Brian. I didn't
because it was just one of the, like she said, like
Yeah.
I was okay with left and I would not have gone back. And it was like, can I ask why?
Right.
No, you may not. I was like, ooh, something happened.
You're like, but I already did ask. You are not answering.
Yeah. Well, it's just
yeah.
It makes me wonder if it was issues with the same dude.
And
maybe Diana Muldaur is just too classy to throw anybody out of the bus,
right.
or if it was something worse. I don't
school.
know. I hope it wasn't anything worse, but
yeah. As this starts to wind down, they talk about the ultimate Frankenstein script, which has already been featured on this show recently, talked about yesterday's Enterprise. When Larry joined us last year, after we interviewed him, we asked him back to do a random episode, which turned out to be an episode of his choosing, which was the yesterday's Enterprise, where he revealed a lot of the things that he says here, that that was a slush script that came from a guy named Eric Stillwell and his writing partner, whose name I'm forgetting, but it is featured in here. But then it came with Hans Beimler and Ron and Ira Stephen Bear, who was the first time I remember seeing his name, who was the guy, one of the guys who really shaped DS9 in its prime.
Yep.
And he tells this great story about how this was Thanksgiving in 1989, probably.
Yeah.
Because I think this aired in 1990, how each one of them took an act, and over the Thanksgiving weekend, they all worked on it, came back on Monday, and they just kind of crammed it all together like Frankenstein.
Yeah,
and
that was
wild. And the point is made. Denise has this great line, because obviously bringing Tasha Yar back was the crux of the episode. I had to die to get a good script, because it was said by, and I didn't attribute it to it, say it, that it was the first truly great episode of TNG, and I would have to agree. I would have to agree. Yeah, because it was before Best of Both Worlds, and then obviously.
I mean, there's some really solid episodes before that in season 2.
Yeah, The Measure of the Man is a solid episode, but that's probably the only one I would say would be. That was the winner of our bracketology for episode 100 of our show. But this was top 5. I would have to imagine. I'd have to go back.
Yesterday's Enterprise is really good. It's one of my favorites.
And they wrap it up with talking about Gene's death, which happened obviously about a year jump forward in continuity from yesterday's Enterprise. And it reminds you of everything he did accomplish despite the massive drubbing he has taken throughout. Mm-hmm. But Brent Spiner comes back and says, there are not many people that create something in entertainment, I think in reference, that lasts for 55 years, which is now 60 years when we're recording this. So that is true. Gene Roddenberry was a human being. He did human being stuff.
Yep.
But he gave the world this vision of the fact that we can do better than we are.
Masterful visionary.
Yeah. So. Even if he was just a human being who didn't make choices that other people would make.
And sometimes didn't even live up to the vision that he was holding up.
Right, exactly. The truest example of a human being.
Yep.
And the episode wraps up with this super dark tee up to the next episode about Deep Space Nine. So I can't wait to talk about that. But yeah, he was right. It was it's definitely a paradigm shift. So, but yeah, I'm enjoying the hell out of watching this again, and getting really granular about it. I dig it. Again, Peter watched it on Plex. I watched it on Amazon Prime. Remember that it's out of sequence. If you're going to start this, scroll forward, keep clicking your cursor right till you get to episode 11, because that's actually episode 5. But again, it's on Peacock and Roku is what my research initially changed up. But remember, your mileage may vary because licensing things change. But it should be out there for you to see. But that's our show. Yeah. We will be back in our next episode to talk about Starfleet Academy. I'm definitely interested, if you're listening to this and you have thoughts about Starfleet Academy before, after watching, because I believe the first 2 episodes come out on the same day. We're talking about January 15 of 2026, which is where we are right now. If you have thoughts, and I'll put this on all our socials as well, please send them to us. We would love to have list of thoughts to share as people are watching it, without a doubt. But yeah, we'll be back to talk about that. But Peter, where do people find you in the meantime?
You can find me around the interwebs at Petrus Aquinas on most social media. I am not active, but you can poke at me.
Poke.
Otherwise, you can find me on our Discord. You can also find me over on ELH's Twitch and YouTube channel, where we do some Star Trek adventures. And then you can also find me behind the scenes on Starship Excelsior.
Very cool. And I am on most all the socials. On my personal accounts is at the C3, TheCeeThree. But I also take a strong hand in running the Secret Friends Unite socials. It'd be our Discord and all the other ones. I've fallen off the horse, but I'm going to get back today on doing my little kitchen talks, where I just come on and featured on our TikTok and then on our YouTube and other streamers out there. I'm just talking about stuff I'm enjoying. Just kind of keeps us out there. But first and foremost, I've been trying to do a better job mentioning, as I was talking about a moment ago, we would love to hear from you about things that you're enjoying. It doesn't have to be Star Trek, can be absolutely anything. Yeah. secretfriendsunite@gmail.com. That has always been our email address. We would love to hear from you about stuff you're enjoying. Also, obviously, find all of our episodes at secretfriendsunite.com. That's the warehouse of all of our stuff. And of course, over on our Patreon at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. For 7 days for free. But with that, that is our show. We will see you when we get to Starfleet Academy. But tell you as always that sharing is caring, and to keep on trucking.
Peace and long life.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network, available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and podcast services around the galaxy, as well as video on our YouTube channel. You can support Secret Friends Unite by becoming a Patreon member, get bonus programs and more over at patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. Join our Discord community for even more discussions on all things geek. For all the latest updates on Secret Friends Unite, make sure to follow us on Threads at secret.friends.unite and visit secretfriendsunite.com. Find our merchandise at TeePublic and Redbubble. Thanks for listening, and may the Force live long and prosper.